It's Sunday, September 21, 2025. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism at patreon.com/5minutenews. Our guest today is an investigator, writer, founder, and Iraq combat veteran who studies disinformation and domestic extremist movements and runs a non-profit dedicated to upholding democratic values and countering the rise of authoritarianism. Kristofer Goldsmith, welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Thanks for having me.
Chris, it's been a couple of years since you and I last spoke on this show, and in that time, the shift that you predicted to the far right and the rise of authoritarianism has clearly come to fruition. We've passed that point of no return. It feels like for a lot of people, and a lot of people are hurting. Are you surprised it's happened as quickly as it has, or is this kind of in line with your predictions?
So I have, for the last few years, been writing scenarios, scenario planning exercises, war games, and we are about where I thought that we'd be. The only thing that I think that I've been on the record about that I've been wrong about so far is I thought that the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, would have been dismantled by August, and that there would be a much bigger kind of public resistance from the veterans community. Now, I was part of a massive protest. 7,000 veterans from around the country came to DC in June to protest these cuts. So maybe we stopped that from happening. But otherwise, as far as things like concentration camps, a secret police force, kidnapping people off of the street, the decimation of entire agencies and departments. These are all things that I put in writing and put in front of, most of the hashtag resistance thinkers over the last few years. And a lot of them looked at these things and said, no, this is too extreme. This is too unrealistic. And they didn't take the scenario planning and the wargaming very seriously because they thought that I was wrong. And I'll tell you one thing, I am unfortunately very good at my job, and it sucks being right.
There is an exceptionalism built into American culture, though, isn't there? Where people feel like it can't happen here because this is America. What do you say to that?
I say that people should study history a little closer. There was an entire fascist movement. There was an American Nazi party in the 1930s and 1940s. When Donald Trump held a neo-Nazi-esque rally at Madison Square Garden just before he won the election, that was a strong echo of history. These things have almost happened before, and we made it through those periods by the skin of our teeth. And it wasn't by accident. It was because a lot of Americans and a lot of veterans rose up and started taking action on their own, working with law enforcement, as I do at Task Force Butler, to gather evidence of criminality and to hold these people accountable in a court of law. And we need to do that now. That is what every American ought to be focused on. I know a lot of people feel hopeless, but the reason that I'm still out in the public and doing these shows instead of moving to Canada is because I still believe that we can be saved. But we're not going to be saved by someone else. It's got to be us.
And we should probably remind people that in terms of US law, there isn't really any jurisdiction for kind of homegrown terrorism. Just explain that to people, because it seems ridiculous, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the big worry with Congress, with any law about domestic terrorism, it really comes out of or was strengthened by the global war on terror and the Patriot Act and the excesses that we saw during that period, namely the violation of privacy rights of people who practiced Islam or were from the Middle East. Right. I grew up as a New Yorker. I was 16 years old when the Twin Towers were hit. Right. I remember the the racism and the Islamophobia that was palpable back then. And that wasn't just regular people. That was people in government too. So we have, for better or worse, recognized that if there are domestic terrorism laws, that we don't trust one another to govern responsibly with the extraordinary powers that would come with that designation. However, as of the time that we are recording this right now, Trump tweeted on his, discount version of Twitter platform last night that he was going to make Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. He was going to do that designation. That's not the way that the law works, but we've seen how this administration acts and how the courts respond. I run an organization called Veterans Fighting Fascism. I am going to be on the list. And, I don't know what's going to happen. It probably means that the IRS is going to be leveraged against me. People in the FBI work with me. There are case files where I'm both a victim and a witness. I have provided evidence of criminality for domestic extremists for years. I don't know how the FBI could possibly justify coming after me, but there are other tools in government that Trump sycophants and federal workers who may not have any other context might see, oh, okay, this looks like a warning sign. I should do an inspection, which might sound like nothing, but it's not. If I have to pay for lawyers and forensic accountants and all sorts of stuff to go through my entire adult life and every time I've swiped my credit card, that is going to take me off the field and maybe make me lose my house. So that is the type of weaponized government that we are about to experience. It's not we might. This is not hypothetical. This is where we are. It's where it's going, and it's where I personally am going to be.
The language he used in that post on Truth Social, I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots. Mm-hmm. I guess that starts with referring to kind of white Christian nationalists and MAGA Republicans, that I am designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. And I will be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. As you quite rightly say, Antifa is short for anti-fascist. It's not a single group. It's not really organized. It's decentralized. It's just a collection of individuals, basically, that oppose right-wing and fascist ideologies, this name of which has been created by the right. How do you designate an organization that isn't an organization? Is it simply the case that anybody who does not follow the far-right MAGA Republican mantra is an enemy of the state?
The state can designate anyone an Antifa terrorist in the same way that the state designated people a witch during the Salem witch trials. It is a fantasy that unfortunately is a living nightmare for those of us who are going to be victims of it. There is no such thing as Antifa as an organization. It's an ideology in the same way that Christianity is. I don't believe that there's an angry sky god who cares about what I do, right? That is my belief. I do, however, believe in the United States Constitution, and I believe in the rule of law. So that is the closest thing that I have to an angry sky god, is the people that we've documented in history with their thoughts, their intents, and their reasoning in going into creating the nation that we live in today. I adhere to anti-fascist principles because the founders of this country that I am living in wanted to stop a monarch from being able to rule their lives, from being able to end their lives at will without any sense of justice. My religion, in the same way that people believe that someone died on a cross and was raised 3 days later, is a belief in the criminal justice system, and that while imperfect, it is something that we all have a stake in and that we should all work to make better.
On the 25th of August, the President's Homeland Security Advisor and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller gave an interview to Sean Hannity on Fox and said that the Democrat Party does not fight for, care about, or represent American citizens. It's entirely devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democratic Party is not a political party. It's a domestic extremist organization. This is an extension of this language, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Miller said that first, and then Trump picks up on that and designates Antifa a domestic terror organization. I mean, a lot of this stuff seems to be coming from Stephen Miller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stephen Miller has always been a fascist. I mean, there are videos of him in, I think, his prep school or college where he is just espousing racist, misogynistic, and sexist beliefs. Before the first Trump administration, when it was just a campaign, when he was just on the campaign staff, he was coordinating with fascists like Steve Bannon to control the messaging for the broader conservative movement. I say this as someone who has studied misinformation, disinformation, radicalization, and extremism for a very long time. And that is the opening end of the funnel. When you have political campaigns which turn into administrations, which are shaping the news that people consume, shaping the reality that we all perceive, and that influences a lot of Americans who lack the critical thinking skills to recognize that they are immersing themselves in propaganda, and they are polluting our democracy. They're using our democratic tools to end our democracy. They won the election. They won the election fairly, but they did that after a violent coup where their followers were bussed to the Capitol by figures like Charlie Kirk, who are now painted as a saint or as a martyr in his death, when he was an insurrectionist, when he paid for the insurrection, when he defended those people who beat cops, which resulted not just in a couple of deaths, but many suicides. Because these police officers swore an oath to their constitution, to their country, and their country, with Donald Trump as the commander in chief, abandoned them that day to people who were acting like Osama bin Laden's greatest hopes and dreams. These people are terrorists, and that is frankly how the Biden administration should have treated them. It's how Democrats should have treated them. They committed a terrorist attack. It meets the legal definition of terrorism. It's the use of force or the use of violence to coerce a government or a people into a political ends. That is the definition of terrorism.
But should they not have prosecuted Trump rather than
absolutely
those who came to the Capitol? Because, you know, the people that stormed the Capitol, they did get quite significant penalties.
But they weren't charged with
terrorism.
Right. Yeah. Because as we started this conversation, there is no domestic terrorism law.
Donald Trump pardoned and issued commutations to all but a handful of the individuals that stormed the Capitol that day. Mm-hmm. There is a certain irony now where he talks about being tough on crime and sending the military into cities, and at the same time releasing criminals who committed a crime on television with so much evidence that he instigated. You know, we're going to go to the Capitol, I'm going to go with you, and if you don't fight, you're not going to have a country anymore. Mm-hmm. How do we qualify that hypocrisy in this moment?
We look at history to inform us and help us understand that this is not an aberration. It's not a new thing. Donald Trump is not inventing authoritarianism or fascism. He is following the authoritarian playbook. Now, when people hear me say that, they assume that I mean he's like reading a manual and he's following what Stalin or what Hitler fascist Italy did, sort of the black shirts, the brown shirts could rise to the fascist party, the Nazi party. That is not what I'm saying. Authoritarian tendencies are a personality trait, and that is who Donald Trump has always been. And many people far smarter than me clocked that long before I did. I only learned about fascism because of Donald Trump. And I started studying this history. But the reason why I created with one of my nonprofits, Veterans Fighting Fascism, the Anti-Fascist Book Club, is so that I could encourage other people to read about the history of fascism, because the history of fascism is one of loss. It is one of defeat. Now, it may take 4 years or it may take 40 years, but fascism always loses and democracy does rise again. Now, the reason that I want people to become knowledgeable about this and not just read a list of books online and read by themselves, but actually start a book club is because it's important right now that people recognize that not everybody should be focused on Washington like you and I are. We are national figures. We have podcasts. We are syndicated, right? The average person can do much more about the fascism that grows in their backyard than they can in Congress, the White House, or DC. It's the school board that your Democratic vote counts more towards. And it is the school board. It is your county officials, your state legislatures. Those are where you and a small group of motivated friends who want to defend democracy can have the greatest impact. So if you go to veteransfightingfascism.org, everything that you need, including an instruction manual on the first 6 meetings, the first 6 convenings, reading through several books, everything that you need is there. You just have to find your group, and you just have to find a place, whether it's a coffee shop or a bar or a park. Building those in-person relationships are the most critical thing right now that people can do to actually stop the rise of fascism and authoritarianism in this country.
During a conference on civics education in New York on Tuesday this week, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned that the poor quality of civics education means that Americans may not be entirely clear on what makes a president different to a monarch. I mean, this in its simplest form is a problem, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you don't know the difference between a king and a president, then, what chance have you in this moment in recognizing who the fascist is? When you're told that, when you're told that it's the opposing political party. Yeah,
Donald Trump is a really effective communicator, and he is what I think will be history's most effective gaslighter. He's not the first. Many authoritarians, including those who are alive today, like Vladimir Putin, are effective gaslighters, but their effect on the globe, on the world, is far smaller than what Donald Trump is able to accomplish. Donald Trump, when he was out on the campaign trail, he started calling all of us, anyone who wasn't a MAGA Republican, a socialist, a communist, and a fascist, as if those things aren't opposite or conflicting ideologies, like you're all three at once.
Yeah.
But his people, they just hear these buzzwords and there's an emotion connected to them. The average American has something like a 6th grade reading level, which is not an accident. Since Reagan, since the decade that I was born in the 1980s, the Republicans have been obsessed with trying to dismantle the American education system. We are seeing them make massive advances now. And test scores keep growing worse over time. Well, there's a reason for that, because our education systems are little bubbles. If you're lucky to be wealthy or born in a wealthy neighborhood, you're going to grow up with a great education. But if you grow up in a place where there is not a lot of wealth, you are fucked. And that is the result of old school Republican politics. And it is only going to grow worse as, the World Wrestling Entertainment owner, Linda McMahon, inserts herself ever more into dismantling the Department of Education.
She's taken a job which she ultimately is charged with closing down. Remarkable, really, yeah.
I think that the most revealing public speaking engagement that she did, I forget the venue, but she sat down and she talked at length at how A1 was impacting education. That's right. Because she didn't recognize what AI, artificial intelligence, stood for. So several times she repeated, A1 education is just so groundbreaking. This woman is not just unqualified, but she is so disconnected from reading the news that she doesn't even realize how dumb she is. And it is a shame. It is a travesty that she's just kind of like one of the less harmful of Donald Trump's inner circle.
Because people with as little experience as her are heading up all the departments of Trump's cabinet. I mean, this is the concern, from healthcare with a vaccine conspiracy theorist through to the Department of Justice with Trump's own personal lawyers, two of them heading it up. I mean, this is problematic. I want to talk about Charlie Kirk, who you mentioned. This week, the story that has really kind of rocked not just the US, but actually right across the world is the news that Jimmy Kimmel Live has been indefinitely dropped by ABC over Kimmel's remarks about Charlie Kirk, which were really, nothing specific. He was playing audio of Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk's own words. I mean, it's not really necessary to kind of add anything to that, to the narrative when they're, doing so much of it themselves. But what has changed here, I guess, is a very kind of clear and direct and specific decision to silence free speech and claim that it is hate speech. And even Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, had to walk back some remarks she said about them criminalizing hate speech, because, of course, the people on the right wouldn't want that either. But in the wake of Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination, Trump did a video message from the Oval Office and called Kirk a martyr for truth and freedom. He condemned the demonizing of political opponents in the US, and at the same time claimed that the radical left was directly responsible for Kirk's assassination. Again, the hypocrisy, accusing people of inflammatory language and in the same breath using inflammatory language. This is where America finds itself right now.
Yeah, Donald Trump, during his first term, inspired the person that we used to call the MAGA bomber. Remember the guy who lived in the van with the Trump stickers all over it, who mailed pipe bombs to CNN and other newsrooms? We have collectively, I think, forgotten that Donald Trump's candidacy and his rule has been defined by inspiring domestic terrorists. Now, Charlie Kirk is not a good guy. He was not a good guy. He should not be remembered or memorialized or whitewashed that way. Charlie Kirk was at least intelligent enough to know the damage that he was doing. He was a bad faith debater who used logical fallacies deliberately, because you cannot speak that much, that often to that many people and not learn what logical fallacies are, right? So he was intentionally misleading people, lying to people, spreading disinformation throughout his entire public life. One of his most effective, but unknown to us, to normal people, one of his most effective projects was what he called the Professor Watch List, which was effectively a hit list. He managed a list of what grew to at least, and it may be many more, at least 800 professors. More often than not, either women, members of the LGBTQ community, or people of color who were teaching about their own communities, the history of racism, anti-racism, slavery, gender science, women's studies, and feminism. history and science. Charlie Kirk would put them on this public list and make them targets, coordinating with Breitbart and Fox News and all of these tremendous media outlets, which combined have unfathomable amounts of influence and wealth and resources. And he would ruin these people's lives. Now, his objective was very clearly to get these professors fired. But the effect, which he knew because of public reporting and because I know that he knew how to read, he knew that the people who he put on that list would receive swarms of racist death threats, of rape threats. The threats would not just go to the professor themselves, but to their children, to their homes, to their families. He broke apart communities and he broke apart families. And I don't know this for certain, but I suspect as a mental health advocate, as someone who's studied suicidology, I suspect that Charlie Kirk's actions directly led to suicides. I don't know for sure, but all of the evidence is there for me to be able to confidently say that it's very likely that Charlie Kirk led to people ending their own lives because of those racist death threats, those rape threats that would hit families. And to see so many political pundits and politicians of all stripes, identifying as liberal, progressive, conservative, Republican, who are well-meaning people, generally speaking. I'm going to include everyone across the political spectrum. They don't know this. And they are lionizing a man whose greatest legacy was political terrorism for the crime of thinking something Charlie Kirk didn't want or didn't like. And the greatest irony that I'm seeing right now is that all of his followers are living his legacy of punishing people for free speech. That is the true legacy of Charlie Kirk. That is how history will remember him. Even if the MAGAs out there and the people who just don't pay attention to the news, even if they don't think that that's the way that things ought to be or are, that is the objective truth. And that's where the evidence leads us to understand it.
His widow has just been announced as the new chief operating officer or chief executive of Turning Point USA, the organization that Kirk founded to mobilize young Christian conservatives, which has seen a massive surge in interest and support, they're saying, since this assassination. And the momentum that has come off the back of this. I mean, the timing is not ideal, considering that Democrats are struggling so much to kind of find their footing, because what this has done is it's been weaponized. It's given license to Trump and his associates to claim that, this is a line in the sand, and anybody who speaks out against Charlie Kirk, let alone the issues that Charlie Kirk espoused, are in some way, breaking the law or being disrespectful. Again, a complete attack on First Amendment rights and free speech. This is the timing of it. If we could just talk to that, because we see the country going in this direction. We see the military on the streets. We see Trump seeking to kind of take over democratic cities and even a train station, and yet the death of Charlie Kirk is giving them a more leverage and a greater platform with which to bring about this hate.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk's widow gave what has been widely received as a very moving and emotional speech. And I have no doubt that the expressions of emotion that she has shared are true. But what I heard in that speech that she gave was almost like an American jihad, a religious call to action for their followers. And there's a term called stochastic terrorism, which is something that Charlie used with his hit list, the professor watch list, right? Where he identified specific targets, but didn't tell anyone to harass them or threaten them or send them rape threats, right? His widow is picking up the mantle. She is going to be the stochastic terrorist at the head of that organization, who is going to wield her husband's death and the political terrorism organization that they built, and they're going to wield it against people who don't have the resources to fight back. They're going to wield it against people who are expressing their First Amendment protected rights, and this follows in the footsteps of authoritarian movements in the past, where political assassinations, which this was, are used to strip the rights of a political opposition, no matter their lack of involvement or lack of calling or support for it. They're taking, random high school students and college students' Instagram posts, and they are ruining lives for them. There is nothing more Charlie Kirk of an action than that.
The response from the administration to fly flags at half-staff, to bring Charlie Kirk's body back on Air Force Two with the vice president wrapped in a flag, these things are all very symbolic. And now we're hearing that Pentagon leaders are considering a new recruiting campaign that would encourage young people to honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk by joining the military. They're framing this recruitment campaign as a national call to service, with slogans such as "Charlie has awakened a generation of warriors." This is as a veteran yourself, I mean, this is very dangerous, isn't it?
It is. This is an explicit call for political violence. And again, Donald Trump and his administration, they are not the first fascists to use gaslighting to try to make you feel like you're crazy. To have the party that has not just excused, but celebrated political terrorism, to start accusing their enemies, who are at the same time, these soft blue-haired soy boys who aren't men, right? Who don't exhibit any sort of masculinity and couldn't stand up to them in a fight, right? There's this Schrodinger's Antifa, is hyper violent, but also a giant wuss. That is deliberate. That is purposeful, because they are whipping up their side into a frenzy, and their objective is not democracy. It is power. It is a unitary leader. It is a fascist dictator. And as Donald Trump, often floats ideas before he embraces them, he has said, well, a lot of people are saying that they want a dictator, right? He said that in the White House. So as time goes on, we are going to see him like he has always done, because the man has never done a new thing in his life. He just repeats the same thing over and over. We are going to see him openly embrace his role as a dictator in this country. And the MAGA movement, sadly, my fellow veteran, J.D. Vance, are going to do everything that they can to support it and make sure that there is a violent army behind him.
We have to take a quick break, but I want to come back afterwards and talk about the FBI devoting more time to immigration enforcement and scaling back the investigation of white-collar crime, let alone kind of white homegrown terrorism. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. When you start a podcast, it seems like you have to figure it out all by yourself. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, logos. It can be super overwhelming, and every day seems to introduce a new decision that needs an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can start to begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. And for millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/weekend. Go to shopify.com/weekend. Shopify.com/weekend. We're back on the Weekend Show with Kristofer Goldsmith. I'm Anthony Davis. Kristofer, the shift on the streets of America, Washington, D.C., certainly, Los Angeles, and shortly Chicago, seeing these ICE agents, but now followed by National Guard and the Marines in some cases, has pretty much changed the landscape. Tourism is down significantly. People do not want to come to the United States knowing that the military have basically turned upon the citizens for fear of having their phones taken and them being detained or deported. This kind of level of militarization of American streets is something that we would never expect to see in peacetime. And yet Donald Trump has kind of used excuses about us being under attack, he's found various kind of loopholes in the law to do this, claiming Venezuela is attacking us and finding the justification to throw missiles at boats with, no detainment of individuals, just, killing 11 people in the first boat, 3 people in the second boat. I mean, this is causing tensions not just within the U.S., but certainly outside of the U.S. It's almost like he is goading for some kind of war that will give him license to, put more troops on the streets. Could we just talk to this idea that he is recruiting more and more? I mean, they say 10,000 more ICE agents, and how you feel about this use of kind of the military in their fatigues, with their weapons, with their tanks, not just on the streets of D.C., but certainly growing now to all sanctuary cities.
Mm-hmm. It is my strong belief that the Trump administration is trying to orchestrate an incident that would put an armed civilian up against an armed member of U.S. military forces on American streets. There is no, and how I got to that conclusion is because Pete Hegseth made sure that the National Guard, who's coming from red states, who he considers loyal to Washington, D.C., to occupy what he's hoping those soldiers view as a bit of a foreign land or a hostile territory. Their mission is to rake leaves and spread mulch. But he wants to make sure that they are heavily armed. And at the same time, the other Fox News, or one of the other Fox News hosts who are now part of this administration, Jeanine Pirro, who is the district attorney for Washington, D.C., she has said that she is no longer going to prosecute people for open carrying long guns. In a small district that has a very large number of police comparative to the size of the population. It now has federal troops in the form of the military, of ICE, of FBI agents who used to investigate things like human trafficking, who are now trying to find people at your local bodega. there are more cops and more law enforcement than ever on the streets of DC. Why is Jeanine Pirro inviting American citizens to carry long rifles or long guns on the streets of the capital city? I think that the only logical conclusion is that they are hoping for some sort of vigilante violence, because with that many uniformed personnel in the district right now, it can only get worse if you have armed citizens, armed Americans prowling around the streets with assault weapons. So as far as what this is doing to the military, it is not just deeply saddening to me as a veteran, as someone who, though I didn't have a great time when I went to Iraq, like I generally feel good about having served my country. I feel ashamed. And according to surveys within the military, according to leaked documents, the military knows that the troops that it has on the ground in DC, they also feel a sense of shame.
Immigration and customs enforcement recruitment efforts are proving to be a success for Trump. 141,000 applications, 18,000 tentative job offers since the recruitment push started at the end of July. They're offering a $50,000 sign-up bonus, student loan forgiveness, special retirement benefits. I mean, these incentives are beyond what, meanwhile they're firing federal workers because they're disloyal, and yet offering people jobs in this kind of domestic military.
Yeah.
As you describe it all, if you take the component parts and you think critically and you put them together and you look at the timing of the midterms, this is clearly all heading towards a certain place that people need to wake up and, as you say, kind of recognize that they are craving some kind of uprising or civil war or something, so that they then have excuse to use those long guns.
Yes. So I served in the United States military. I signed my contract in 2003, the year that I graduated high school. I was in basic training by January of 2004. I got a sign-on bonus of something like $6,000. And for a high school student in that age, I felt like a ton of money. But that was the first year of the Iraq War when I signed my paperwork. By the time that I got to Iraq in 2005, there were tremendous bonuses for people to sign up for the military, not just because it became extremely difficult to recruit, because people realized, oh, this war is going to last a lot longer than we were promised, but because the war itself was unpopular. So that is what we are seeing with ICE right now. We are seeing the government try to do a troop surge into what will be the American streets, with masked, unaccountable secret police, who are today acting in many of the same ways as the SS did when the Nazis rose to power. I know that people feel like anytime someone invokes the Nazis or Nazi Germany, that we have gone too far, that we are exaggerating. I would encourage those people to go to veteransfightingfascism.org and look at the Anti-Fascist Book Club, and that list of books is written by historians who study this, who are specialists in the rise of fascism and authoritarianism, both in history and in modern times, and the parallels are direct.
People fail to recognize that the use of the term Nazi in this day is not a slur. It's not done to kind of criticize or piss people off. It is a description of a pattern of behavior that we have learned from history. And this I find very interesting. Oh, you can't say Nazi, it's a step too far. But, we saw, and I don't know if you saw that debate that Mehdi Hassan did with all of these young people who were, Republicans or certainly on the right and
self-described fascists.
Self-described fascists. That one guy was like, yeah, maybe I am a Nazi. And he presented as a perfectly ordinary young person. And he was actually thrilled at the idea of being called a Nazi. My fear is that if anybody had the courage to actually call Donald Trump a dictator to his face, he would probably relish the description.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, one of the missing pieces that the critics, the good faith critics who say you shouldn't invoke Nazis will say, well, National Socialism wasn't just about racism and hate and violence. It was about systems of control. It was about a unification of the corporations, of the business of a country and the government. And the Jimmy Kimmel firing shows just that. The sale of TikTok, which Democrats should blame themselves for in the House and Senate for passing that stupid law. TikTok is now going to have an American government official sitting on the board. I mean, there are lots of definitions for National Socialism that people can argue about, but things are happening that are making it more and more and more difficult for even the most good faith historians or political scientists to say, no, we're not there yet. What else do you call it when a corporation, when corporations are colluding with the administration, wielding force against people, violating their First Amendment rights, saying you can't say that. We are going to punish you. We are going to take away your voice. People need to know that the FCC chairman was threatening ABC, CBS, and the rest of the networks if they don't fire these comedians. And in a fascist takeover, in an authoritarian takeover, some of the first victims, as far as professions go, are comedians because they speak the truth.
Yes.
And they are absolutists when it comes to responsible use of and strong use of our First Amendments. And we are watching National Socialism in every definition that you can find, like coming to fruition here in the United States.
The new Federal Communications Commission chair is Brendan Carr, Trump appointee. He warned publicly that broadcasters risked fines or even license revocation if they continued to air Kimmel's program. And so, as you described, this is exactly, the tying in the corporations with the government, supposedly a regulator. I mean, this is, again, this stuff is, it's not sexy enough for people to really care. The moment you say FCC, people fall asleep.
Yeah.
But that is problematic, isn't it?
And talking about mega conglomerates like Disney and like Sinclair and Tegna right now, who have bought up hundreds and hundreds of local news stations who may be ABC or Fox or CBS affiliates. So when you turn on, for me, it's like Channel 4, and Channel 4 is NBC, Channel 5 is Fox 5. Mm-hmm. Those in New York are owned by the big companies, by the corporations. But if you live in rural Pennsylvania or, Kentucky, and you've got an ABC or a CBS or a Fox, there's a very high chance that it's owned by one of just a small handful of these conglomerates. And it was Sinclair, one of these mega conglomerates, that has been pushing must reads, which means these are things that everyone in every single station has to cover. This story, here's a script, which is Orwellian as it gets. Sinclair wrote to the mothership and said that we are not going to have Jimmy Kimmel anywhere in any of the stations. And that is because Sinclair is a fascist run organization that is trying to align itself with Trump. And
it was remarks about, not about Trump really, but about Charlie Kirk that instigated this, that clearly emotions and tensions are running so high, and that, Charlie Kirk is charged with helping to get Donald Trump elected, amongst other things. And so there really is this kind of, is there much space between Charlie Kirk and the White House? I mean, he was in the White House all the time. He was contributing to policy. He was working with Stephen Miller. I mean, these people are all very much part of this regime change that isn't just moving the political position in the US as a whole, which is a minority position. We should remind people the US, when polled nationally, is a majority progressive thinking country on all of these hot button issues that Charlie Kirk was dead against, including abortion, and shifting the whole country on its axis, including away from Europe and towards Russia. I mean, this is going to have ramifications on the world stage if it isn't already. Certainly when we see Donald Trump kind of claiming that he's going to sanction Putin and just never does. This keeps happening. Marco Rubio is running out of excuses when he's asked by the media. Why haven't you done anything about it? Well, in 2 weeks.
The Vice President of the United States broadcast for 2 hours on Charlie Kirk's show from the White House threats against Democrats and liberals and progressives, branding us with Stephen Miller as a terrorist movement. I used to be a Republican once upon a time. When I was in the Army, I was a Republican. And I remember a time when my peers, my fellow Republicans and libertarians, would be absolutely disturbed of the idea of state-sponsored media. But in the year of 2025, we have Republicans, people who at least have Republican next to their name, who are in office or who are voters, who apparently want to be more like North Korea or communist China, where you have the party projecting its message and communicating threats to its political opposition, saying that it's going to use all of the powers of the government to squelch their speech, their freedom of assembly. This is profoundly fucking disturbing. And I feel like for the last 10 years, we have heard folks like Ruth Ben-Ghiat, author of Strongmen, talking about how we are sleepwalking into authoritarianism, meaning that we are not reacting in the way that we should if we were fully awake. It is my hope that more people are waking up today and are recognizing how unusual and how threatening it is to have state-sponsored media the way that we do today.
These individuals that are being hand-selected for ICE, as well as senior military leaders. I mean, Trump fired the Joint Chiefs of Staff and brought in people that were more politically aligned. Not to mention who you already alluded to, Pete Hegseth, former Fox Weekend host, who was briefly in the military, refers to kind of war fighters, we shouldn't kind of not mention the fact that they're rebranding the Department of Defense, the Department of War. I mean, that is in direct contradiction to what they claim about stopping wars, ending wars, no new wars, and yet to go on the defensive, on the offense as opposed to the defense with this description is pretty horrifying, actually. If anything, it is igniting tensions. What is going to be the result of military appointees, but also people, even on the ground, like ICE agents, being far-right nationalists, being Trump loyalists? How does that change things in this country? So
I have spent the last 5 years in a very small niche industry. Rolling Stone wrote an article. The headline was "The Neo-Nazi Hunter Next Door." Right? That is what I do for a living. I gather evidence of extremist movements and hold them accountable in a court of law. My industry of people fighting extremism, radicalization, misinformation, disinformation has been persecuted by Jim Jordan and his weaponization committee for years. And the Democratic Party and the apparatus around it of foundations that J.D. Vance is now accusing of funding Antifa, very ironically, never came to our aid, never helped us. I've been running these nonprofits without pay for well over a year and a half. And we're in a moment when people are like, oh, well, why are you still worried about like the Nazis jumping out of the back of the U-Haul trucks when we have ICE? Well, who the fuck do you think is joining ICE right now? And wouldn't it be nice if me and my team had a database where we could identify known neo-Nazis as they're joining state forces? Wouldn't it be nice? But unfortunately, that didn't happen because all of the people in the positions of power in the fantasy land that JD Vance thinks that we were sprinkled with money, that never actually happened. We've people in my industry have been starving, burning themselves out, and leaving. Because for 5 years, we were, after January 6th, especially when there's a surge of volunteers, we've been looking at the worst stuff that exists on the planet, let alone in the United States. And we've been paying with our health. We've been paying out of pocket to fight this patriotic fight without any real support.
There's been some weird stuff going down recently. A couple of events happened. 2 deaths in Mississippi are in the national spotlight. A black student at Delta State University, a white homeless man in Vicksburg, both found dead on Monday, September 15, hanging from trees. The way the police have handled this, saying, initially they ruled that this first one was a suicide, and then, the other one was found near a casino, and police are still investigating, and then they find a note and various things. A kind of level of weirdness, to the point that people have been writing to me saying, can you explain what is going on here? My concern that the knock-on effect of a lot of the behavior or a lot of the changes in US politics, the shift, as you just described, the personal toll, is affecting people differently. Mm-hmm. Whether they choose to go and spend money in a casino, whether they choose to take their own lives, whether they, in the case of this young man who climbed up on top of the building to take a single shot at Charlie Kirk. So a kid who came from a Republican Mormon household who basically even found that the language of Donald Trump was too fascistic for him and found solace in a partner who made him understand the truth about humanity and society. The whitewashing of even Thomas Matthew Crooks, the kid who took a shot at Donald Trump, I mean, also from a Republican family. That whole conversation has been silenced. There is a kind of a level of weirdness associated with these stories that the media are not prepared to discuss, that the police are kind of playing down. What do you think the effect is going to be on society going forward when the rhetoric from not just the president, but all of his entire administration and those that follow him is dialed up to 11?
So for as long as you and I have known each other, for several years, people have come to me to explain these difficult things, to explain the crazy extremist conspiracy theories that resulted in violence, or these horrific acts of violence where a shooter or the perpetrator leaves symbols and messages and memes. People have been asking me, as we started this episode talking about, to write scenario planning exercises and war games to game out what the future would look like. We are reaching the point where I no longer have answers. And that scares me, because I know that people on the other side of people who are working in the FBI, who are generally patriotic, great, I mean, not overwhelmingly, they are overwhelmingly good, patriotic Americans. I know that they don't have many more answers than I do. We are experiencing right now the result of a decade plus of these strange online spaces colliding with the ever more present social media that reaches all of us, and the festering hatred and violence that grew in those dark spaces are starting to come into the world that the rest of us live in, that I used to have to go into to research, in places that platforms and apps that no one's ever heard of. Now it's everywhere. It's gotten out of the box. Pandora's box of ugliness, of hatred has exploded. And I no longer, I've been treated like a fucking oracle. And to be honest, I don't know how I'm so good at predicting things, like laying it all out there. I don't have any more answers. I've reached the end of the projections that I've made in my research. And I can only assume that it gets worse from here.
And to really highlight this point, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the new FBI director, who himself is a conspiracy theorist, former kind of podcaster, Kash Patel, steps up to the microphone after making a bunch of false statements about who they had captured, which had to be retracted, and says, to my friend Charlie Kirk, I'll see you in Valhalla. Mm-hmm. And, the media didn't really pick up on this, but as I understand it, Valhalla has been co-opted by the far right, to the extent that the person who attacked 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019 also said in his farewell note, I will see you all in Valhalla. And while some people kind of, they just ignored it and said, oh, it's a thing about Vikings and it's in movies and computer games, any kind of deep analysis will expose the fact that this is messaging, as I see it. This is communicating to this audience of the far right. He said, we have the watch now. What do you think he really meant there? And how do you translate that use of language?
It is far less nefarious and far dumber than you might think. And that is, Kash Patel is cosplaying as a soldier, as a veteran. The Valhalla thing, I'll see you in Valhalla thing, became very popular in the American military and veterans community over the last 20 years. It was a way for us who may not be religious to kind of find this like unity thing. There are certain things about the military that you could never understand unless you're there. Like, we do not say goodbye. We don't say goodbye. The words goodbye don't come out of our mouths. We say, I'll see you next time. I'll see you later. Because when someone goes out on patrol and you say goodbye, you've said goodbye. And that is something you can't take back, right? So whether it's not superstition's not the right word. It's just a culture that we have built. And Kash Patel wants to be one of us. And that was his pathetic and disgusting attempt at stolen valor, to pretend as if he is actually a law enforcement guy, which he's not. He's a lawyer. Like, yes, he was confirmed, unfortunately, but he doesn't know the first thing about law enforcement, let alone any sort of other uniformed service. So I don't think that he had any idea that he was repeating the last words of the Christchurch shooter, which an FBI director should probably know that. But, Donald Trump wanted to make sure that we had a podcaster, a loyalist, an extremist, and a conspiracy theorist as the FBI director. And this is the world that we have to live in, as dumb as it is today.
Finally, Chris, we have to finish in a second, but what would you say to people who are, as you are and as I am, feeling a lot of feels right now? There is a lot of uncertainty and nervousness. People who can get out are getting out. People are leaving the country. People who have family in other countries and can get passports are taking advantage of their ancestry to do that, moving to Ireland or, places that anywhere other than the US. What would you say to people who are here, who cannot leave, who don't have the means to kind of remove themselves from this rise of authoritarianism? How do people go forward? How do they feel safe in this moment?
So the social media algorithms recognize that people like me who fit my demographic and social media activity are considering moving to other countries because I'm getting a lot of ads on meta platforms and everything else to fast track citizenship and visas. So this is something that I know that many Americans are being served, and that is helping reinforce this idea of maybe I really should escape because I'm seeing this so often. I want to encourage people to, even if they do have the means to leave our country, recognize that the fewer people that we have who support democracy in the United States, the easier it is for the fascists to win. And having a fascist United States of America is bad for the entire world, and it will touch you no matter where you go. So that is one part. But this may sound callous, but to people who are feeling these feelings, I want to say, welcome. I've been here a long time. And I'm still here, still fighting. I'm still putting myself out there. You know, it is not easy, you know, having my family, threatened, not by anonymous people online, but by people who end up getting locked away on federal charges, because they're serious criminals. I have chosen to embrace this life because, you know, when I was 5 years old and my granduncles were still alive, all of those who fought in World War II, I loved them. I loved their camaraderie. They were all former sailors and soldiers. And I loved, as flawed as America is, the idea of fighting for my country. Now, I did join the army and went to Iraq, which is a bullshit war, so I never really got to fight for my country in that way. It is a rewarding experience to stay here and fight. It is a rewarding experience to fight against violence using the rule of law. It is a rewarding experience to grow a community around things like I keep pitching the Anti-Fascist Book Club, the instructions of which you can find at veteransfightingfascism.org. It is exciting to me to have my own new podcast, the Find Out podcast, with a bunch of other white dudes for Harris, a bunch of dudes who just met online, who are talking about what it's like. I'm a brand new father. I've got a 3-month-old. We're talking about what it's like to raise a little girl in Trump's America. You don't have to. The worst thing that you can do is nothing. The best thing that you can do is focus on community. Focus on your family. Focus on your friends. If you don't have people who appreciate you close to you, there are online communities. There's an anti-fascist book club that just started on Substack that I'm going to be on as often as I can on Fridays. And if people want to join that, want to follow me, they can find me anywhere on all the social media apps. My name starts with a K, Chris Goldsmith. Easy to find. Join an anti-fascist book club. Start building that community, and start finding hope in happy warriors, people who are not violent, people who are going to be branded as terrorists because they're anti-fascists, but people who are going to embrace that label. I am Antifa in the same way that my granduncles were. They fought Nazis. They fought the fascists in Italy. I keep in my office the letter from the president after my grandmother's brother was killed in the European theater, as a reminder that Antifa is in my blood, and it has been for generations.
Kristofer Goldsmith, thank you for joining The Weekend Show.
Thank you, brother.
I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism at patreon.com/5Minute News, or by joining the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest, more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.